Hello everyone. In the previous lecture, we had studied about the basics of electrostatics. We have defined what a charge is, its properties, and also methods of charging. In this lecture, we will continue forward with the discussion on further topics in electrostatics. The first topic here is to define as to what is a point charge. The idea of point here is not the same as we learn in geometry, because in geometry a point means a body whose dimension is very small, or it has zero dimensions. But in physics, the idea of a point charge is different than the idea of point in geometry. Here point means it is a relative term. Whether it is a point charge or a point mass, these are relative terms. So to define it, we say whenever the linear sizes, this could mean, example, think like a, say, a sphere. It could be its diameter. Think of a rod. It could be its length. So whenever the linear sizes of charges are negligible compared to the distance of separation between them, then the charged bodies are called as point charges. Now, make sense out of it. Think of a body like we have a charge sphere somewhere here, and then we have a charge sphere close to it. In this case, if we look at the dimensions, for example, think of their diameter of the two spheres. In this case, if we look at their separation from here to here, compare this distance, we call it as d. In this case, this d is not very much greater than their diameters. So in this case, these objects cannot be called as point objects. We take a case where we have one sphere here and one more very far away. Think of like this. Think of very far away. I cannot draw beyond this in this board, but think of very far away object. In that case, the distance between them we call something as like d. So here d is their separation. So in this case, we find that the body's diameters are smaller. Think of it very far away. It is not visible in this diagram, but think of very far away. So in such cases, if the diameters are small compared with the distances involved, then we can consider or assume that these are like point charges. Now the same objects weren't point charges when they were kept close by, but the same objects become point objects when they're far away. So that is what is said to be relative definition. That is because the next topic, which is Coulomb's law, is based on, or it is true only for, point charges. Now we will define and look at what is Coulomb's law. It is also called as Coulomb's inverse square law. I'll tell you why it is called as inverse square law. Now here is a artistic diagram or picture of Coulomb. It says the electrostatic, because do remember we are dealing with electrostatics only. So the electrostatic force of attraction or repulsion between any two static point charges is directly proportional to the product of the magnitudes of the charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So to understand this, we will consider 2 point charges. we'll call it as Q1 and then Q2. Now suppose if there is some separation, let the distance between them say be some d. Our books call r generally, we'll call r only here. It's r between them. Now what is seen is, you might have learnt in high school that like charges would repel each other and unlike charges will attract each other. If you assume that both Q1 and Q2 placed at A and B respectively are of same polarity, that is, both Q1 and Q2 could be positive or both could be negative. So in case when both have same polarity, then the force between them will be a repulsive force. If we assume that one charge has a positive polarity and other charge has a negative polarity, in that case the force would be a attractive force. So it says that the force of attraction or repulsion. Now instead of this arrangement, if you look at 2 point masses, say called as m1 and m2, in case of masses the forces are always attractive. You might have learned this in first year, called as Newton's law of gravitation. Here, since the charges can have two polarities, the force between them could be attractive or repulsive force. Now what is seen is experimentally, when Coulomb did this, it was based on experiments. So he found out that the force between them, that is, the force what A exerts on B or the force what B exerts on A, that force is called as F. So we'll call F as the force between them. Now this force is directly proportional to the product of their magnitudes. This is very important. The product of their magnitudes, and also the force between them is inversely proportional to the square of their separation. These are based on observations or facts. If you combine these two together, then what we get is that the force between them is proportional to Q1 Q2 by r square. The next step is to bring in a constant, and that constant is given as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by r square. So this is the required form for Coulomb's law. To make it simple to write, I'll drop the mod signs here and I will write this as force is equal to Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon naught into r square. Do understand that even though I have dropped the mod symbol, it is understood that what we write is only the charge magnitude, not with their polarities. This is called as Coulomb's law. Now there's a new term here called as epsilon naught. The symbol is called as epsilon. It is a Greek alphabet, and here naught or 0 stands for free space. That is, it means that these two charges are kept in free space or vacuum. Epsilon naught is called as permittivity of free space. So this tells us how much of electric field lines can pass through a given material. So it is called as permittivity. Here permittivity or permit is a common English word. Now to understand in better language, we'll think, for example, we have a bulb at some point, think like a bulb. Let us take three objects, an object here, an object here, an object somewhere here, such that the distance of the objects from this bulb is same. Let this be, for example, say a glass. Let this be a paper. That is, it is paper. And let this be wood. Now, from the bulb, same amount of light will fall on all this material, but the light what comes out would be varying. It is common sense that most light would come out of glass and then paper and then wood. Even though light falling is same on all the materials, the same light falling on them, what comes out is different. So we can think of that sense here also. So permittivity here tells us how much of these electric lines of force would pass through a material. Now this permittivity, the value of it is given as 8.855 into 10 power minus 12 Coulomb square per Newton per meter square. To understand this, to derive this expression, to derive this unit, think of the previous formula where F was given as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. And from here, if you cross multiply, then epsilon naught is equal to, it will be Q1 Q2 by 4 pi, or other way, to make it more simpler, you know, directly also here. So dimension of force is Newton, and dimensionally this would be Coulomb square, this is meter square. So we want a term here, that term should be such a way that the answer is Newton only, because dimension should be same on both sides, which means you want Newton here, so it should be Newton and then per meter square per Coulomb square. This should be the unit for 1 by epsilon naught, which means that is, it is Newton per meter square. It is plus meter square here, this gets cancelled. It is square per Coulomb square. This is what is 1 by epsilon naught. From here, epsilon naught is equal to Coulomb square per Newton per meter square. That's why remember those dimensions. There's no need to mug up these dimensions. You can derive it in using this formula also. But remember this value. This is very, very important. Now, when you put the values here, that is, the formula for force was given as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 R square. Since here the whole thing is a constant, because 4 is a constant, pi is a constant, and even this is a constant. So instead of writing such a big number, we will make it more simpler. We'll define, or we will equate this to k. So let k is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. And when you put the values of 4, pi and epsilon naught and solve it, then this whole thing is equal to 9 into 10 power 9. So from now on, I will write the force form as F is equal to K Q1 Q2 by R square, because it is easy to write in this way. The idea is same. So this is the form of force, but this force is a vector quantity, so we need to write it in vector form. To write in vector form, we need two things. We need the magnitude plus direction. That's what we need. So the form what you got here, this is its magnitude, and for direction we need to define some direction. Let us define a unit vector called as r cap. We are defining this, and this r cap is defined to be from A to B. So I'm defining this to be along A to B like this. This is called as r cap. So let the force which charge A exert on charge B be called as F21. So F21 means it is force on charge Q2 due to charge Q1. So that force is given like this. Now it basically means it is the force on charge Q2 because of charge Q1. Since both of these are same polarity, Q1 would push Q2 away. So force would be in this direction. This is called as F21. Similarly, the force which B exits on A would be in this direction. We'll call it as F12. So F12 is a force which charge at point B exerts on charge at point A. Now if we look at direction of r cap, it is obvious that F21 is along r cap and F12 is against r cap. So writing in vector form, what we get is we can write this F21 in vector form. Vector form means it will have both direction and magnitude. In this case, the magnitude is given as K Q1 Q2 by r square into direction. F21 was along r cap only, so it becomes into r cap. Now remember that a unit vector is used only for direction purpose. I will find the force on 1 because of 2. Now even this will have same magnitude. That is because from Newton's third law of motion, we know that for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction. For example, think of a wall like this. There's a person, and this person is pushing the wall with a force of say 20 Newton. Now if the person applies a force of 20 Newton on the wall in this direction, we'll call this as force on the wall by the person. Simultaneously, this wall will apply a force of 20 Newton on the person in this direction. So the force would be same in magnitude but different in direction. So with that in mind, this F12 would be the same magnitude, but this force is opposite to r cap. So it becomes minus r cap, or you can write this as F12 as minus of K Q1 Q2 r square into r cap. This is what is F12. It is very obvious from here that F12 and F21 are same in magnitude. That is, F12 is same as F21, but in terms of direction, it is not same. F21 is equal to negative of the other force. So do remember that these two are different meaning. This means we are only equating their magnitude. This means we are equating magnitude and direction, so we get a minus sign here. So this means that these two forces obey Newton's third law of motion. So this is required expression for force. Now, as I told you earlier, the force goes as 1 by r square. So hence it is called as inverse square law. Inverse square law means the force goes as 1 over distance square. One example of inverse square law is the force between two masses, where the force between two point masses is given as g m1 m2 by r square. Even there is called as inverse square law. So there are some forces in universe which obey this behavior. This is very important. That is because what is seen is the force goes as 1 by r power n minus 1, where n is number of dimensions of the universe, where n is number of dimensions. Since the universe is three-dimensional, it goes as r square. Suppose if you imagine that, or if you can think that the universe, say, is made up of 7 dimensions, we can't perceive it, but take a rough example where it is containing 7 dimensions. In that case, the force between the two objects will go as 1 by r power 7 minus 1, which is 1 by r power 6. So this is a very, very fundamental understanding, that the reason it is 1 by r square is because of the universe dimension. What about the force in different medium? That is, if the 2 point charges which were placed in air, we call them as q1 and q2, and we call them as a and b, and separation was given as r. Suppose the entire object is placed in some other medium. For example, it's dropped in a liquid. In that case, the force should change, because the permittivity will not be constant. It will change with the medium. Epsilon naught was the permittivity for free space. So this is not same everywhere. So in that case, if we put the objects in a medium whose permittivity is given as epsilon m, so the force between them is equal to, it will be 1 by 4 pi, it is epsilon m now, into the product of the charge magnitudes by r square. So I'll put suffix m here. So this means it is force in the medium. We need to connect the force in medium, the force in, say, air, because for force in air was given as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by r square. Suffix a is put here to differentiate it from other medium, but even then, if you don't put suffix a, it is understood that it is force in air only. We need to connect the force in some medium with the force in air. So what we do now in this case is, we define a term called as relative permittivity. Relative permittivity is called as epsilon r. This is defined as epsilon m by epsilon naught. So it is defined. So from here, if we write epsilon for the medium, so epsilon for the medium here is equal to epsilon naught into epsilon r. Putting it back in this equation, what we get is, we get force in the medium is equal to 1 by 4 pi. Epsilon for the medium becomes epsilon naught into epsilon r, and this term is as it is. But recall, what is this equal to? This whole thing is equal to force in air. Therefore, force in any medium is equal to force in air, or just F, by epsilon r. This is called as relative permittivity, this term here. We will learn later that this term is got another name to it. It is called as dielectric constant. We will learn next second chapter The symbol for it is, say, K, like this, a running K. Don't get confused with this K and this K. This is dielectric constant and this is just a constant. Do note that for air or vacuum, epsilon r is equal to 1, because in that case the same medium, it becomes epsilon for medium by epsilon for free space, but epsilon for medium is same as epsilon naught only because it's air, so it becomes 1. For conductors, epsilon r, it tends to infinity. So remember this also. It will help to solve numericals. Next we'll define 1 coulomb. In the previous lecture, we had defined 1 coulomb in terms of number of charges which were flowing. In this topic, we will define 1 coulomb from definition of force itself. We saw that force between two charges is given as K Q1 Q2 by R square. So from this definition, we should define what is 1 coulomb. So if both Q1 and Q2 is equal to 1 coulomb, and also the distance between the charges, which is R, say if it equal to 1 meter, then what we get from this definition would be that force is equal to 9 into 10 power 9, and it will be 1 into 1 because both Q1 and Q2 are 1 coulomb each by 1 square. So mathematically we get force is equal to 9 into 10 power 9 mathematically. So we say that the two charges are said to be having value of 1 coulomb if the force between them is equal to 9 into 10 power 9 Newton for a separation of 1 meter in vacuum or air. That is, if you have two charges, say called as Q1 and Q2, if suppose the distance between them is 1 meter, and if the force which say Q1 exerts on Q2 or the force which Q2 exerts on Q1, if that force is equal to 9 into 10 power 9 Newton, then we can say that the charge of each one would be 1 coulomb. So we are defining 1 coulomb from here. We saw in the previous lecture that 1 coulomb is a very big unit. So its submultiples or smaller units are used like millicoulomb, microcoulomb or nano coulomb. Just study what is their multiples, because this would help in numericals. The next topic is limitations of Coulomb's law. Now Coulomb's law is not always true. It is valid only in case of charges at rest. If charges are in motion, in that case Coulomb's law is not valid. Second point is Coulomb's law is valid only for point charges, not for external object. To understand this, let us consider two objects. We'll call this as object A, and this as object B. Let the separation from their center to center be R. Now in this case, we can divide any one object. For example, because object A, we can divide into small stripes. A stripe like this, a stripe like this, a stripe like this. So we're dividing the entire charge into small regions or small stripes. Now if you look at carefully, the distance of this stripe from center is something else the distance of this stripe is different, the distance from here is different. So in this case, what happens is we can't use a single Coulomb's law because the distance of each part is different from each part here. So in that sense, we should find what is the force for each of the strip on this and integrate and do it from there. Otherwise, in simple language, we can't use a single law here if the objects are quite big in size. The third point is, it is valid only when the separation between charges is greater than 10 power minus 50 meter. That is because if you look at an atom, suppose imagine that this is structure of an atom. We saw in the previous lecture that the atom contains a center part called as nucleus. This is called as nucleus. This nucleus contains the protons and the neutrons. It's called as nucleus, and around the nucleus the electrons would move in certain orbits. Now what happens is, generally the distance of the electron from this nucleus generally it's of the order of 10 power minus 10 meter. It could vary also based on the atomic size, but generally the size is of this order. But if we look at this nucleus alone, this nucleus alone is of the order of 10 power minus 15 meter. Nucleus is very small. So if you just look at this part, if you enlarge this part and see, then you can think of this like this. Let the red dot indicate the protons and let the black dot indicates the neutrons. Now if you look at any two protons, a proton here and proton here, if you look at these two protons, for these two protons I'll dot separately here. For these two protons, between them three forces act. So one force between them would be, since protons have mass, between them gravitational force will act because they have masses. Second thing, between them Coulomb's force will act, that is electrostatic force. And also between them is something called as a strong nuclear force. You learn this in first year. The strong nuclear force will act. Now, simultaneously between these two particles all these three forces will act, but out of these three forces, for a given distance, this strong nuclear force is the strongest force, which means at this point even this Coulomb's law and also this also acts, but their strength is negligible. It's very small. So in that case we can neglect the effect of this force. So we say that whenever the distance is of this order, then the only force or the force acting between them would be the strong nuclear force, or you can say that Coulomb's law is not valid or it's not appreciable at this separation. The next topic is very important from exam point of view to solve numericals. It is called as principle of superposition. To understand this, let us take an example. Think of example where you have a charge here. We'll call it as charge Q1. Somewhere here we have charge Q2. Somewhere here a charge minus Q3, and here a charge say plus Q4, and somewhere here a charge say Q5. Now there are 5 charges now. Suppose if you want to find the force on this charge alone, then what will happen is, in that case the remaining charges, which is Q1 minus Q3, Q5 and Q4, all of these charges will exert a force on this charge Q2, and the resultant force is obtained by adding all the forces by vector addition. So that principle is called as principle of superposition. So to define this, it says, according to principle of superposition in a system of charges, the force on any one of the charges is unaffected by the presence of other charges, and the net force is given by the vector sum of forces exerted by all other charges. It means that if you want to find the force on this charge Q2, then the force which Q1 exerts would be as if these are not present. That is, the force which Q1 exerts on this would be independent of these charges present. That is what is the first statement given here. It says the force on any one of the charges is unaffected by the presence of other charges. So since in this case Q1 and Q2 they have same polarity, the force which this exerts would be a repulsive force. We'll call this as F1. So F1 is a force which the charge Q1 exerts. Similarly, the force which this charge Q4 exerts would be again a repulsive force because it is a positive charge. So this force would be going away like this. It's a repulsive force. The force which Q5 exerts, we call this as F4. The force which Q5 exerts, even this force would be a repulsive force like this. So this force we call as F5, and the force which this charge exerts would be an attractive force because they are different polarities. So this force will be attractive like this. We'll call this as F3. We have four forces now. We have the force F1, F5, F4 and F3. So in this case, the net force between them, we just call as capital F. This net force is equal to vector sum of each forces. So this is the principle. This principle is called as principle of superposition. Do understand that this principle is true for any two vectors, not only for forces. Generally, for any vectors, the resultant vector is given by vector sum of individual vectors. This is the principle in vectors. If you have more than two, you just keep adding them. So even force is a vector quantity, hence the same principle is even true here also. We will take up some examples to understand the earlier concepts. Example 1 says, what is the force between two small charged spheres having charges of 2 into 10 power minus 7 and 3 into 10 power minus 7 placed 30 centimeter apart in air? So it is given that the charges are kept in air. Now small charges means we can use Coulomb's law. That's the meaning of this. So let the charges be called as, say, Q1 and Q2. Their values are given as 2 into 10 power minus 7 and this is 3 into 10 power minus 7, and the separation is given as 30 centimeter. 30 centimeter. Now do remember that in numericals always write the quantities in SI unit. 30 centimeter is same as 0.3 meter. So the force between them, since they are placed in air, the force between them is given as K into Q1 Q2 by R square. That is equal to, the value of K is known to us, which is 9 into 10 power 9. Q1 is 2 into 10 power minus 7. Q2 is 3 into 10 power minus 7 by distance square. So write this as 0.3 the whole square. So F is equal to, you can write this as 9 into, this becomes 6 into, that is 2 into 3 is 6, and powers here would be 10 power minus 14 plus 5 plus 9, that will be 10 power minus 5, by, we can write this 0.3 square as 9 into 10 power minus 2. So from here, this term gets cancelled, and what remains would be the force, which is 6 into 10 power minus 3 Newton. That's the required answer. Example 2 says the electrostatic force on a small sphere of charge 0.4 microcoulomb due to another small sphere of charge minus 0.8 microcoulomb in air is 0.2 Newton. So here the force is given between charges. Question says there are two parts to it. Part A says what is the distance between the two spheres, and part B is what is the force on the second sphere due to the first sphere. We'll first find the part A. So question says the force between them is given as, they kept in air, so it's given as K Q1 Q2 by R square. In this case the force is given, so we know that force is 0.2, so 0.2 is equal to 9 into 10 power 9 into Q1 is given as 0.4 into 10 power minus 6, and Q2, do remember that in Coulomb's law we are using only the charge magnitudes, not with signs. So even though it is minus 0.8 microcoulomb, can write this as only 0.8 into 10 power minus 6 by distance is not known to us by R square. Now to solve it further, we can say from here it's like 1s are, it is 2s are, so cross multiply, so R square is equal to, it is 9 into 0.8, you can write 0.8 as 8, it becomes 9 into 8 into 2 would be 16 into 16 into, we took point outside, it becomes 10 power minus 7 here. So minus 7 minus 6 is minus 13 plus 9, 10 power minus 4. That is what is R square is equal to 144 into 10 power minus 2. This is what is R square. From this, R is equal to under root of 144 into 10 power minus 2. That is equal to minus 4 here. That is 12 into 10 power minus 2, or R is equal to 12 centimeter. That's what the value of R is, or it is 0.12 meter. The second part says what is the force on the second sphere due to the first sphere. We learnt in early topic that the forces what the charges exert on each other would be same. If the charge Q1 exerts a force of 0.2 Newton on Q2, then simultaneously the charge Q2 would exert the same force on charge Q1. Hence, the force would also be 0.2 Newton only. That's the answer. Part 3 says a sphere carrying a charge of minus 20 microcoulomb is placed at a certain distance from another identical, we'll see what it means later, sphere carrying a charge of plus 80 microcoulomb. The two spheres are brought in contact, separated, and kept in the original positions. Compare the forces between them before and after they are in contact. That is, to make sense out of it, the two spheres, we'll call them as sphere A and sphere B. Initially, the charges on the spheres are given as minus 20 microcoulomb. The charge here is plus 80 microcoulomb. So these two spheres have some separation between them. Let it be say some r. What is happening is, the next instance, the two spheres are brought in contact, separated, and kept in the original positions. Before that, we'll find what is the force between them now. We will call that force as F1. This force F1 is given as K, and Q1 is 20 into 10 power minus 6, and Q2 is 80 into 10 power minus 6 by r square. That's the force F1. Now the spheres are brought in contact. Then what happens is, when you touch them together, we learnt in previous class that charge would add up. So charge here is minus 20 microcoulomb. The charge here is plus 80 microcoulomb. So when you add them together, the net charge becomes sum of these two. So the net charge becomes 80 microcoulomb minus 20 microcoulomb is equal to 60 microcoulomb. So that is charge between the two for the entire system. So the total charge now becomes 60 microcoulomb. This 60 microcoulomb is for both the charges spheres together. Now when you separate them, when you move them away, what happens is, this charge divides into the two spheres. But since the spheres are identical, which means they have same material and same dimensions, since they are identical, this 60 microcoulomb divides equally between the two spheres. So what I get now is, we have two spheres with the same separation, but now the charge on them is not as the earlier case, it's modified now. They have same separation. So charge on this would be 30 microcoulomb. Here also it is 30 microcoulomb. That's the charge between them now. Now the force in this case you call as F2. This F2 is equal to, it is K. Q1 is 30 into 10 power minus 6, and Q2 is again 30 into 10 power minus 6 by r square. If you want to find the ratio, we'll divide this by this. So we'll divide this by this by this. The common term gets cancelled. So here K is common between them, and also r is same between them, and also 10 power minus 6 and this 10 power minus 6 here. Finally, what remains would be F1 by F2 is equal to, it will be 20 into 80 by 30 into 30. From here, zeros gets cancelled. So what remains would be, it will be 16 by 9. So the force in this case is changed. It's 16 by, the ratio now becomes 16:9. Example 4 says, charge Q is divided into two parts, which are then kept at some distance apart. We have charge Q. This charge Q is broken into two parts. The force between them will be maximum if the two parts are having the charge. It says what is charge, question mark here. So just find the charge. That is, if you break a given charge Q into two parts, then the question says for what proportions or for what values will they be having maximum force. Now recall that to find maxima or to find maximum or minimum, we need to find its differential. Now here, let the charge be, one charge be Q. So if one charge is Q, then the next charge, the remaining charge, also so one more charge, it will be capital Q minus small q, so that sum of these two would be capital Q only. There are two charges like this. Now you need to find for what value is the force maximum. Suppose if distance between them is say some r, then the value of force is given as K. It will be Q, capital Q minus small q by r square. Now here the variable is small q. That's a variable here because based on small q, this also would be varying. So we need to find a differential. To find the differential, we take df by dq is equal to, it will be d by dq of k q, capital Q minus small q by r square. Now from here we'll pull out the constants. So from here k by r square comes out, and what remains is d by dq of, it will be, if you take q inside, becomes capital Q into small q minus q square is what we get. Again we use the product rule. We can break in two parts. It is k by r square. If you define first term, then it will be, this capital Q is constant because Q is fixed, so it will be capital Q into d by dq of small q minus d by d of q square, that is equal to k by r square. It will be q into 1 minus 2q. But to find the maxima, that is to find whether the force is maximum or minimum, we need to equate this first order differential into 0. So equating to 0, then what we get is, this term when you become 0, it becomes 0 because you can take it here. So what remains is that we get here q minus 2q is equal to 0. Therefore it means that q is equal to capital Q by 2. So when the charge is exactly divided into two equal halves, then the force becomes maximum. This is the answer to this. Thank you.